It's IG Live at 2 p.m. this afternoon, and that's right now. It's IG Live at Vancouver, my second episode, and I am about to welcome my special guest today. It's Cassandra Anderton at Good Life Van on all the different social platforms. And I've known Cassandra a very long time, longer than I've even had Vancouver Foodsters. So I think we met about 13 or 14 years ago at a food event that I was attending for one of my other sites that I actually had at that time. And one publicist had an event, and I met Cassandra through that event. And the publicist was Kate Simpson at the time. I don't remember what the event actually was, but Cassandra might. So Cassandra will be joining us any minute now, and we will be talking about the restaurant industry currently, sort of like what's going on right now as the government has announced some changes and restaurants are about to reopen, and we will be talking about that. So if you have any questions, please hold on to them. And once Cassandra joins us, we'll be talking and we will be taking your questions. So Cassandra, just waiting for you to request to join here, and then we can get started. So hopefully she'll be joining us at any minute now. And if you have questions, comments, anything like that, we'll be happy to take that from you. So just waiting for Cassandra to join us, and we will be talking shortly. And a lot going on in the restaurant scene in Vancouver right now. Let's see. Looks like we've got Cassandra coming on right now. Let's hope. Cassandra, are you there? There we go.
Oh, I am here.
She is here.
How are you?
Hi, great. How are you doing?
Good. I think you missed my first request. It's yeah. I jumped in and jumped out, but here we are.
So we've got a lot going on here. You know, you and I met I think it was like 13 or 14 years ago. It was Kate Simpson had a restaurant type tasting.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what that would have been.
A long time ago, but it was great, and we've done a lot together over the years. There's a lot going on. So, for you and I, we both eat in restaurants like all the time. This is the longest I've ever gone not eating inside a restaurant, and I'm sure for you it's
sure.
the same.
Exactly.
Right? So with everything that's going on right now in the restaurant industry, and it's been in quite disarray for every restaurateur that has never gone through anything like this before, into now, the BC Restaurant Association has been involved with the government in setting up new rules on how to get these restaurants reopened. So can you tell us, I mean, you've been reading up a lot about it, when do you think the restaurants are about to, when they're about to open, give dates of when they're going to open, and what do you think is going to happen once they open?
Well, the BC Restaurant Association, Ian Tostenson, and about 100 other members, suppliers, restaurateurs, I know at least 10 people that participated. They were all putting forth a lot of recommendations to WorkSafe BC. So WorkSafe BC will be the ones that actually come out with the policy and say, here's what we are going to do. Right. So some of those things that they recommended was masks and gloves when necessary, spacing between tables, sanitization stations. Where you have an open kitchen, there might be plexiglass there to keep the distance. Employees are going to be trained properly. They will have to sign forms before they come into work. All new employees will be put through a stringent training program. Their temperatures may even be taken as they come to work. Guests will be asked, if there's any doubt that you have any symptoms, you are not to come into the restaurant. So they're really working hard to A, keep the customers safe, and B, keep their employees safe. A lot of these small kitchens, you can't work that far apart. So that's not going to be sustainable for some restaurants to open. There's restaurants like the Pear Tree that if they opened with 50% capacity, they have something like 4 tables. So we're seeing a lot of pivots right now. For instance, as I mentioned, Pear Tree, they're doing takeout Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. There's still going to be a lot of that going on because opening a restaurant, the fixed costs at 50% capacity is not going to be possible for a lot of restaurants out there.
Well, there's one restaurant we know about. They announced a few months ago they were actually closing. It was Bishop's on 4th Avenue in Kitsilano, and then just a total change, a total pivot comes John Bishop about to reopen tomorrow to do takeout. What do you think about that?
Well, I love bishops, and disclaimer, I do some work with them, and they're also in my neighborhood, and I've lived in Kitsilano forever. John was one of the first farm-to-table restaurants. They've been given some, I think, some rent relief, so they still have to pay their rent. So opening to do some takeout is going to be great for them, as it would be for others. One thing about this rent relief that I did want to mention, it's very confusing. I would love to see everybody get rent relief, and it's just quite confusing for landlords, because if you actually own the building, you can't get the relief right now, because you have to have a mortgage to get the relief. So if you're an owner with no mortgage, no relief. So that's one of the things that I think the Restaurant Association is working with to petition the government to change some of these rules and to hear them, and rent relief is going to be key.
And I think also that people really need to be watching the news right now, because a lot of restaurateurs have no idea what's going on. So, I know I watched the BCRFA information last week. I've read the guide. You've read it. I'm sure you've read it as well. And
yeah.
There is a kind of a blueprint out there now for the restaurants. But a lot of small restaurants aren't aware of it, because I've talked to a few owners the last 2 days. They didn't know anything about it. They were trying to figure out, we don't know how to open. How are we supposed to reopen? So hopefully there's that bridging communication but I really think that people need to watch the news, because that seems to be the key, and it's changing constantly.
Yeah. Ian's been on the news. Ian Tostenson, the president, he's been very clear. They interviewed him on, I think it was Global Focus, and it played all weekend. So I saw it numerous times, as well as other channels. So they're going to go through WorkSafe BC, and that's where you're going to hear the report come out of. So your restaurants will hear from WorkSafe, but they should all be involved in the BC Restaurant Association, because it's really for their benefit. It's an amazing group of people that are really in there to help each other, and they're all sitting down at the table right now trying to do the best thing possible for their employees and their customers.
Yeah. So I've been doing a lot of takeout, as you know. Doing a little bit of cooking at home. I see you doing a lot more cooking at home than you've ever done. So are you concerned about going out to the restaurants right now, or is that not an issue for you? And how for people in general, some people are doing takeout. Some people are like, I don't want to take out. I want to stay away from that. But we really want to encourage people to come back to the restaurants to start dining there. But are you concerned that there might be a little lag in that before people are accustomed to going back to the restaurants?
There definitely will be a lag, because people are going to want to see those procedures set up. Alberta is opening up this weekend. I don't know if you heard, but Craft Market is actually opening up, I believe, tomorrow in Alberta.
Okay.
And they've got a huge space. So their 50% capacity is probably feasible. They're also corporate, so they probably have better funding than a lot of other restaurants. So it'll be, we're going to be watching them. We're going to be watching every restaurant as it opens up. I know some restaurants are more keen to open than others. Others are waiting. You can't just open up a restaurant. You've been doing takeout. These aren't the items on your menu that you've normally been doing. It's a huge cost to restock your kitchen and get it going with all the prep you need to make the food that, even if you were doing takeout, I see the items that are coming out. They're more comfort. I got a bunch of things from Argo Cafe, which were just great comfort food, but not necessarily on the regular menu. The Pear Trees menu isn't the regular menu. I saw Heroes. I walked by there the other day, the Japanese restaurant in Kitsilano. Very different from their menu. What we've seen in the States as things open up are restaurants like in Chicago, there's a place called Massachusetts, and they were doing the tasting menus, and now they're just going to open for breakfast and lunch. Other restaurants are takeout with minimal seating. So those are pivots that we're going to see. And the Restaurant Association themselves has said that they don't think anybody's really going to be opening until June. I think they're allowed to open in May, but everybody's sort of, as you said, wanting to do the best for their employees, best for their customers, wanting to make it. They don't want to open and then shut again. So we want this to go forward in the most efficient manner for everyone and get money back in those employees and those restaurateurs' pockets and get this going. But, we're not in a rush. We want to keep safety in mind. Right, and that's, I know how everybody feels.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think the one thing is that people didn't think this was going to go on this long. And of course, now we know it's going to go on for much longer until a vaccine is found, that kind of thing. So when you look at menus of what people have been rolling out, and you're right, a lot of comfort food is what people started with. But when reality is, who really eats lasagna in hot July in Vancouver? Not that many. So if you look at a lot of these restaurants right now, some of them are in comfort food. This is great for maybe March and April. I don't know about now. So I really think that some of them, although doing a great job, I really think some of the menus are going to have to change, because I don't want to be eating lasagna in July, and I'm sure you don't as well. So I think, we're used to seasonal, local food. The farmers are doing a great job. They're still growing everything. So everything still is coming along. But I think some of the menus are going to have to evolve.
Well, I think they will. They will. These are chefs that change with the seasons. We see them do that. So they're going to finally have the farmers markets are open. BC greenhouses, all of the produce is coming out of there. The peppers, the cucumbers, eggplant. Some of the farms have a lot of greens. I know Hannahbrook Farm is doing incredible greens. Those are a little harder to travel. Like a lot of the dishes that you're doing takeout with have to be something that can travel. You don't serve a souffle and then expect it half an hour later to be at home. And that's an extreme example, but yeah, you want to have, you can't, like, your standards can't go out the window and suddenly you're just like producing something that just doesn't plate well at home, and no one wants to see that.
But I also think packaging is important too, because I've had a lot of different takeout in the past couple of months, and some of it packaging is phenomenal and some not at all. So at the time you drive 20 minutes, you get home, you're like, it's kind of going through the bottom of the box, there's different things like that. Like, I think these things are important. So even if you have to charge maybe 20 cents more per person for whatever, just restaurants do it, because you don't want this garbage arriving to your door. If it's skip the dishes or whatever it is, packaging is important of your food, right? So that's, I think that sometimes people miss these things. I think it's important to do.
Bit of a learning curve, definitely.
Yeah. So we're talking to Cassandra Anderton. She's a blogger, food writer, broadcaster. I think you've done everything in town pretty much. And if you have any questions, feel free to send those through right now, and we'll be taking your questions. And, these things are important. We got to talk about things that we know what's happening to our scene in Vancouver. It's a vibrant scene in Vancouver. It always has been. We are watching a lot of stuff in the U.S. right now. And for food writers, we're seeing what's going on. Their situation is totally different than ours. Across Canada, East Coast is totally different than ours. So, Vancouver, I think one thing we were talking about is, back in March, I talked to a restaurateur that told me he didn't think that 20% of the restaurants in Vancouver were going to make it through end of COVID-19. But that was before lots of things happened until then. Ian Tostenson was just talking about last week that he expected 30% of the restaurants wouldn't make it through COVID-19. What's your take on that? Because, Vancouver is a different kind of city for restaurants. There's a constant movement of new restaurants opening up. There's about 40 in the pipeline that I know of right now that are waiting for permits through the city of Vancouver, or they're almost ready, finished construction, and they're kind of holding back. Should they open or should they not open? And this is a real tricky situation. We've never been through anything like this before.
What's your take even getting permits? I know Latana, they were just applying. They were going to be one of the first people to get a virtual permit to switch over to alcohol, which is really cool. There's another restaurant group that's pivoted, and Pepino's doing takeout, and Latana getting alcohol. So the application process, they were supposed to, I think it was like the 12th or something like that, they were going to do, but that's being delayed. So this virtual permits is a definite issue. I know a lot of restaurants that have closed that haven't announced it yet. Yep. We are very different in Vancouver than some of the other areas around BC, because we are the most expensive place to be in. So our bottom line, we need bodies in restaurants to make that happen. But I know the government, I'm quite pleased with the speed that they've worked on some things, and frustrated on the lack of understanding on others. So I'm just hoping everybody is going to be patient, and people going to restaurants as well aren't making the money that they've made. So it's difficult all around. We're just going to have to wait and see, and support those that we can.
There's a comment here just a minute ago. Someone just said that a ice cream shop had opened up recently. They lasted one day, And then because the people were not social distancing properly, they shut it down. Have you heard anything about that?
No, I didn't. But I did hear that there were a couple places that weren't social distancing, and they were quite crowded in Kerrisdale. And I mean, whose responsibility is it to social distance? I mean, I don't know how you can be getting ready in a restaurant, then come running out and say, stand back. And like, how do you manage that?
It's hard, actually. So I think the grocery stores are doing a really good job. Now, I actually have been going to Stong's on Dunbar to do shopping about every 10 days or so now. They're doing an amazing job. These guys got it totally sorted out. You stand in line, and customers, they know. So people stand in line. It's properly in the store. It's really good. And even actually at one point I heard someone say, you know, there was someone that was like inching too close to them with a buggy. Maybe they were 2 feet away, and they called them out on it. So, you know, that's good to see. That doesn't happen everywhere, though. This is just like West Side. But, I mean, it depends on what part of the city you're in and how people are, you know, if you're really worried or if you just, you know how to handle it. So for restaurants and bakeries, I saw this on the weekend, too. So people are eager to get their baked goods. That's exciting. That's really nice. But the reality is, stand back and look at the ground and measure it yourself, and then tell people to move back, because that's the only way. It's great. You'll eventually get your baking, your sweets, and all that kind of stuff. But don't get too eager for it. You really gotta like distance yourself, or if you don't like it, leave the lineup. Now I've left a few lineups already because I'm like, this is not safe to me. I'm out. See ya. Too bad.
And I mean, there's a certain. I mean, there's a group of younger people that are very, very responsible, but there's also a group that feel like they're infallible, and is that even the right word? They just can't be touched. I don't know what I'm speaking of here, but the fact that they're not social distancing, and they haven't been, and they don't they're you know, people are selfish. A lot of people are selfish, and if you're a selfish person that doesn't respect the fact you're going to get somebody else sick, and you feel like you're untouchable, that's the people that are just not taking this seriously. And, you know, I haven't seen my parents in months, like 6 months or so. They were in New Zealand. They were stuck in New Zealand. I'm still waiting. I'm not going to drive up to Kelowna, go to another area over the long weekend. We had wanted to, but that puts them at risk and anybody else at risk. So we're all still supposed to be staying in our pretty tight bubbles here. And I'm being careful when I'm walking down the street, but I know a lot of people aren't. And I've caught myself actually looking at my phone a bit, and then someone has been like, hey, and I've been like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, you know, like. Yeah,
so I've noticed that. So everybody's used to looking at their phone. You know, you got to have a bit of a vision thing around you now, because the minute you're walking with your phone, nobody else is really paying attention. They walk right by you, and then you realize, oh wait, they're too close to me. So that's a key. Like I saw this in Kitsilano yesterday. You just gotta, I think, maybe just put your phone in your pocket, or don't use it as much, or be in a spot where you can do this. So social media is a key, and we both know this a lot with social media. How detrimental is it to you right now for restaurants using social media in this city?
How detrimental is it? Or
that's the wrong word, but like, how do you think they should be using it? Like conveying the social distancing, but also welcoming people into their restaurant to come and buy whatever.
I think clearly communicating the plans that they have to reopen will be very key, and on social media that's a very good way to do that. I saw a great interview with Provence Marina side on the news, and Jean-Francois was measuring tables, and he was talking about exactly what was going to happen. So, you know, videos are very effective. Here's a video of what we're doing, and hey, we're ready for you, and here's an example of what is going to happen. You know, I want to go back to my hairdresser. I'm like, can I please be the first appointment? Like, we'll do a little video. We'll have some fun with it. We'll be like, here's what measures are being taken. Right. And I think that really explaining that, and also, like, let's remember the employees. You know, we want to see them safe. A lot of people were not keen on getting takeout going because they were like, well, that's great, but these employees are going in and working, and they're being exposed. So the restaurants that were doing it right had kitchens that were big enough, and you know, those restaurant employees are our friends. You know, I worked in restaurants forever. I'm a member of Les Dames d'Escoffier. We had our board meeting yesterday, and we have a big event called Summertime that's on every year, a huge fundraiser. And what Les Dames does is fundraise for women's scholarships in hospitality. So we are not going to be able to be hospitable and have our galas, and those restaurants that supported us, you know, when they open again, we can't say, hey, can we get a table for one of our events and can you donate this? Like, we're all going to be going, okay, who supported us in the past and how can we keep them going? And the wineries are a whole nother thing. So, you know, wine tasting is going to be really different this year. Marina Knutson from Spearhead was talking about how they've got some space there, but it will depend on the weather. You know, if you come to the winery and you can sit outside at a table kind of thing, and there can be some social distancing, but wine tasting is very interactive. And, you know, you really want to talk to that person. And how do you do that when you can't have 10 people at the tasting bar? You have 5 tables of 2 and getting around to all of that. So it's going to be really, really interesting to see what happens. But these are creative people, and I'm confident that they will come up with some great solutions.
Yeah, you know, City of Vancouver tonight, I believe it's tonight, they have a city council meeting, and the motion is in front of city council to change the rules with all the city patios for restaurants. Now, from what I understand, it's going to be quite the change, something that we've never experienced here before, that they may close off some streets downtown and restaurants will share the street. Because if you're on Pender Street and you were downtown and there is no patio, what are you going to do, right? You're not going to go to the back alley. That won't quite work. So where are you going to be? So there could perhaps be a street down, you know, down there with 2 restaurants, 3 restaurants sharing the patio, that kind of thing. So it's great in the summertime when it's nice weather. But when it rains in Vancouver, what's going to happen to these restaurants that are on the street share, you know, there's lots of questions there. I'm quite curious to see what the city's going to come up with from this. There
are not enough tents. You can't, you know, these tents aren't in great supply that we can suddenly tent, you know, vast areas.
Tap and Barrel is in a great situation. They have beautiful patios, and they're huge patios, and they can social distance people easily there. That's not the case for most other restaurants in the city. So, you know, hopefully Tap and Barrel will come up with an idea of like how we're going to do this. I know Kraft is talking about how are we going to do this, but, you know, for the smaller restaurants, this is the trickiest thing. Like, how do you maintain your bottom line? How do you maintain your profit? Because you've got to have profit. I'm sure we're going to see increases in prices here soon for restaurants. So people get ready for that, because I'm seeing this in the U.S. already. Prices are coming up, but they have to, in order, if people are going to have less capacity in their restaurant, they're going to have higher prices to make up for that.
Well, the industry was barely functioning in terms of breaking even before, and we've got to think of the fact that these restaurants are also functioning by paying some of the employees, like all across the board. They're paid minimum wage. They don't have health care. Those kind of things should happen. And it's not like one restaurant or the other's fault or our fault, but how do we as a society all say, you know, we need to take care of everybody here. How do we pay more so that restaurants can pay their employees more, and so that we can all get to a better place? I mean, it's a huge conundrum. But yeah, we're definitely going to see some prices going up, I would think. And food shouldn't be as cheap as it is. It is being subsidized by people not having health care, by people not being paid as much as they should. We are not paying the true cost of food.
Right, correct. You're right. And so you and I were talking about before about pivoting restaurants. So what do you think will happen now? So now we've got takeout going on, we've got delivery going on, and then there's some very creative restaurants. Like, you know, St. Mercy has done an amazing job. Like, you know, they opened up in January. First of all, their experience from opening in a location that nobody thought was going to work when they opened Mackenzie Room. Like, I thought maybe a year, but they lasted 5 years. So their experience in doing that, creating a destination, bringing people down there. Then they opened up in mid-January, right when Dine Out started, which was really interesting, and how they were packed every single night. Forget Dine Out going on, but they were full house. And then they get hit with, COVID. What are we going to do? We have to shut down. And they really thought about this quickly, and they put that staff meal program together, and a whole bunch of restaurants are now part of that now. They've changed their menu, they've changed the website, but they're constantly changing. And I think that's what's actually working for them, is that they're changing with everything else that's changing, and they're making it work. So that's a great pivot, and I'm sure that will be a new business for them. Once the whole thing ends, it could be a whole takeout business. But what other kinds of things do you think we're going to see as restaurants pivot in our area?
Well, I do think that we're going to we're going to see people are not going to be able to do the extensive tasting menus. People are not going to be, they're probably going to be regulated in terms of how much time they can spend in a restaurant and how many people can come together. I think they're recommending max 10 that can dine at one table. So our big birthday celebrations and things like that are not going to be happening for a while. In terms of pivot, I think restaurants are going to come up with, new concepts that are kind of faster food, like they have in the States, where the tasting menu is gone and now it's a breakfast and lunch, or where it was family style food and now it's street food on their menu, and a lot more takeout, definitely.
And takeout works this summer, like takeout, if you're going to go take it out to the beach, you can sit on the beach on a blanket away from everybody else. There's lots of ways of doing it. Pizza to the park, that's easy.
Yeah.
Of course, it's a bit more finer dining is a bit trickier, but you can take a tablecloth, you can set it up on the beach, you can be socially distanced with your partner sitting 2 feet, 3 feet away from you. I mean, there's lots of things you can do. But I suppose for the restaurant, because this is the concern about your mom and pop restaurant, this is where the trick is coming in, right? Like, how are they going to adapt to this? And that's where you have to get creative with this. But for them, it may be a little bit harder, especially if you've been a restaurateur, 20, 30 years in business in Vancouver, you've got a good thing going. Then what do you do, right? Like, I've seen a few of these. I love French bistros, and I'm sure you do as well. And I saw Sally de Frit just opened up, and nobody actually knew they reopened, but they're actually doing a beautiful 3-course tasting menu. I guess that's a price fixed menu to go. You can get it in a little box, but it actually looks really good. Not everybody can do that. So you're right. The 8-course tasting menus, I'm not sure if that's going to work this summer. So people have to get creative in different ways.
These are creative people. These are also people that whenever we've wanted money for charity, who do we go to first? Bartenders, chefs, restaurants. They've always been giving. So it may be just really it's really time to give back right now, because these are people that are being hit hardest.
What do you feel right now about these? There's new restaurants about to open, or they've just silently opened in the last few days, but people are like, oh, we're quiet. Well, I don't think, opening right now is actually a really good idea, because until the regulations are in place, the government says, okay, this is what's happening, the restaurant's about to open, then open. But people are opening the past 2 weeks. They can't figure out why they're dead quiet. But that's also part of, you can't really promote it right now.
Yeah, I don't, I mean, I am not in any place to advise on exactly what the P&L for any restaurant is, or how they're, what their marketing is, or how much money they have behind them. But I mean, I wouldn't recommend anybody opening right now, because it's taking away from the story that's already out there. And I don't think people are wanting to embrace the new right now. I think people are wanting to stick with what they know, and these are people they've trusted in the past with their food experiences. You've got to remember, kitchens have always been required to be food safe, so people that are cooking in kitchens really know how to keep germs and out of food. They've been trained, and that those practices are in place so that our food is coming out of the kitchen in a very sanitary manner, and these are people we know. So for me, I'm not about to rush out, give my money to a business that I just met, when I'm really looking forward to restaurants that I've supported in the past, and that I've got to know the people and the story behind. And we're definitely going to see different things. La Kircha's doing great takeout menu as well. They've lots of pastas, and it changes almost daily. I've seen some really good things. Au Comptoir, again, in my neighborhood, they've started doing takeout. So a lot of places are just now starting to do their takeout. So
which is important. I mean, it's surprising. Like, some of them actually closed down right away in mid-March, and then they're like, "What happened? Why are they closed?" I actually thought they actually could have been open, but it took a little while of following your friends to see what your friends are doing, and then they would reopen and sort of copy the friends. But that's how it happened, which is fine. That's how you have to do things. What do you feel about some of the places that have not opened yet? So there are people that are holding on right now. They have not opened. You walk by and they're closed. Like, why is this restaurant closed? But for whatever reason, they're holding on, waiting for whatever. like they don't have the confidence to open. So what do you say to those people? Because I think you get to a point where if you're not open by now, I don't know, it's going to be like worrisome. But any tips on that?
Well, I think a lot of restaurants that aren't open perhaps can't safe distance in the kitchen, or, you know, they really want to keep their employees safe. They may own the building. They may just not have the capacity to do takeout in terms of what their items are. And maybe they have, you know, there's emotional issues going on out there too. Like you got to take that into account. Like all of a sudden, not everybody can switch on a dime. And some people are just going to, the restaurant may not make it just because they're physically worn out. And this is taking a toll on people's mental and physical health to go through all of this. So, I mean, that's, you got to have your body and your soul before you can get anything going. And I think that's a part that we're really going to have to look at. And I know that there are some ways to deal with that. But yeah, I don't know what to tell people that haven't opened. They best know their own business. So
one thing that concerns me, and I'm concerned about this for a while, and as I run the Food Talks events too, we talk about this. You need to have, if you're producing food in Vancouver or anywhere pretty much in BC, you have to have food safe. You have to have a certificate by the health. I lost the word, but the health department. So what's happened during COVID, and we see this on Instagram now constantly, is there's a whole bunch of people that have started cooking in their home, and they're selling food all over their Instagram, and you know they do not have permits from the health department. Yeah. I know this right away. And our people are posting it, and then I'm getting messages, and I'm like, I'm not covering anybody who is cooking from home that does not have a permit. No. So I think people need to know that you got to know that you have to have a health permit. Like, so we're concerned about getting sick in restaurants because we're doing all these precautions of, you know, not getting sick. So we wear our gloves, we wear our masks. But aside from that, you don't know what's going on in people's home. You don't know if people are, you know, someone is there or not. I
wouldn't advise anybody buying food from anyone that hasn't got a health permit. And I mean, if it's your friend sending a casserole down the hallway, great. But there's a lot of stuff out there that you just don't know. And they might be the nicest people in the entire world, but it just could be something that just didn't quite go right. And they don't have they're not licensed. They don't have the commissary kitchens. That's where the food has to be made. Commissary kitchens, right. You know, you can't, even people at the farmer's market, they don't make their jams at home. You know, they're made in facilities that support health.
And we're lucky right now. We've got so many great commissaries around Vancouver that have opened up in the past year. So there's actually a lot of options for people out there. If you're looking to produce food, there's a ton of commissaries around with space, and you can go in and you can book by the hour, by the day, or whatever, and you can make your products. But the problem is, I think there's a thing out there that the government's talking about restaurants and reopening, but no one's talking about if you're producing dumplings or pasta in your kitchen and you're packaging it up right now and you want to be creative, you're selling it over Instagram and people are actually placing orders from you, that you need a health permit. Like, why? How come you have not read up on this yet, right? So there are these things. This concerns me. Like, I see this. I'm seeing so many people right now on Instagram doing this. And, okay, you know, everybody needs to be aware about this. You delivery and all this kind of stuff from people's homes is like, no, you got to have a permit. But, you know, hopefully people will realize that, because I don't know if there's a policing thing out there, especially right now, if the health department's even watching this, but that is kind of a key thing for Vancouver.
Yeah. Safety is really what is first right now. And that's what everybody's going to be keeping in mind. So I'm really looking forward to seeing some of my favorite restaurants come up with these plans and see it unfold and people be able to make money again. And I think that there's a big learning curve here, and we all have to be patient, and we all have to be kind, and we all have to realize that people are doing their best. You know, ranting about things not going perfectly doesn't help anyone. I know what I'm talking about. But you know, it's just a time for everybody to really be safe.
What Dr. Henry says it really good. And every day she says, be calm, be kind. And she's right.
Yeah.
Because that is true, because the reality is you've got most of these restaurants right now do not have servers on staff. They're mostly on EI. So you've got the manager or the owner is behind there running around. You've got one or two chefs in the kitchen. That's pretty much it. And they're doing everything. Yeah. And if you're on multiple delivery services, this is tricky. So if you're in a restaurant, even if you're standing at the door and you hear beep, 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 this is Fan Tuan, this is Skip the Dishes, and their things are ringing like crazy. So some restaurants are doing quite the business, which is great to see. But you have so many systems, they're getting so many checks coming up constantly, and then people are outside like, my order's not ready yet, why not? So people need to understand there's a reason why it's not ready yet, because if you're missing all your staff in a restaurant or a bakery or a cafe or whatever, it's going to take some time before you have got it kind of on a level playing field. I think
every single person should be made to work in a restaurant and see what it's like when you're in the weeds. Right, you know, when I've been waitressing when the tables keep coming in and you've got all of a sudden 20 tables at a time and the owner is telling you, yep, we're still happening and everybody wants a drink and it's all happening at once, and all you can do is smile and do your very best, and you know, that's got to be something people need to understand.
I don't know if you've heard this yet or not. Are the concessions going to reopen this summer at the beaches and parks?
Haven't heard anything about that. That could be, I mean, I can see that happening because there would be social distancing. You know, you could put the plexiglass up. You could pass through like the liquor stores are doing now. You know, you put your wine underneath. And I think that could be possible, but I haven't heard.
Padgels is doing that in Steveston now. So Padgels has 2 locations out there. One is in Gary Point Park. They're doing a great job with it. So they've got people lining up kind of like a concession. You can call your order in and then you just go down and pick it up. So that's easy. Or you can just go up and people are pretty good. They stand like 2 meters apart from each other. You go and you order, you stand back, they call your name and you come and pick it up. So I think these guys have done a good job. They've been open for about a month or so now doing this. So there's a lot of lessons that people can learn. And I think that for a restaurant or bakery, if you've got a chance, what you could do is you could see some of the restaurants and bakeries that are already open now and go down and just stand away from them and watch, see how people are doing it. I think if you see how people are doing it and you like it, that's how you implement it yourself.
Yeah. Right? There's I think that a lot of people are going to be learning from others, and that's going to be key right now. And just, you know, unfortunately, it's going to be like a bit of an experiment out there with some people. They're going to have to say, okay, well, this worked, this didn't, and readjust themselves and carry on.
Is there anything you don't want to see happen? Like, you've traveled all over the world, right? You've seen things happen in all these countries that are not even necessarily, you know, of course, with COVID, but is there anything you didn't like when you were out dining somewhere else in the world that you don't want to see happen here? I don't know.
I think it all goes back to just patience, and unfortunately people are going to have to listen to the people that own the restaurant. So I think, like, even though people are thinking, oh, we're in a socialist state and we're being told what to do, sometimes you just have to be told what to do because the rules have to be the rules. So, you know, I think that respect has to be something that's key. I can't think of anything that I really dislike except for rudeness and inability to sympathize and empathize with people. So like right now, as I, you know, say, just give everybody a moment to adjust.
Right, and it's going to take a little while, because even though the restaurants, the government has said you can open June 1st now for inside dining, but it's got to be socially distanced. That, I think, is still going to take a little while. Some restaurants will get it right away, because that's, you know, their teams have been working on this for a while now. So that's going to happen. And others, it's not going to happen right away, and it's going to take a little time. I think it will take a few weeks. So probably by July, we're probably going to see most restaurants have reopened by then. Most will have social distancing rules in place. You may have the plexiglass shields. I know Eddie's Hang-Ups is doing a brisk business right now in shields. So Via Tavere and all these restaurants have installed these plexiglass shields. If people don't know where to get them, Eddie's Hang-Ups is a retailer for retailers. They are selling these right now, and you can get them for your restaurant. I think it's important, though, when you walk into a restaurant to do takeout, that they do have these plexiglass things between you, because some restaurants don't. So I've walked into a few Indian restaurants, and they don't have it. They just have a table and some guy with a mask on. That's nice. But the reality is, I think people will be a bit more safe if you have some sort of plexiglass in place. So that's kind of key. But a lot of people don't know where to buy them. So that's where you get them from.
There's going to be a big run on plexiglass. Totally. Lots of things we're not going to, like hand sanitizer. There's going to have to be hand sanitizing stations. I saw now, Odd Society is producing hand sanitizer that's now available in London Drug. So if you're looking for a way to sanitize your hands and support local, off you go. So there's going to be a lot of things that we're going to have to stock up on it. It's going to be like a rush on toilet paper, rush on plexiglass, rush on sanitizer again as these things become, and toilet paper, I guess. Restaurants need to stock up on toilet paper again.
Well, right, because that's another concern about using your restaurant's washroom. So the new normal is what it's called. So we're going to be seeing a lot of that. I think there's a lot of restaurants that started out a little while ago and they're doing a really good job. I know Autostrada, someone just piped in about Autostrada is doing a good job. I haven't actually tried that one during the pandemic time, but I've seen, what they're doing there. There are a lot of global group has also pivoted completely. They changed all the menus. So previously, if it was a $20 pizza, it's now a $15 pizza. So, Ahmad's done a very good job with this. I think he looked at there. He's got large restaurants, and how am I gonna, I can't.
I know he's very keen to open up. He's very keen to open up, and he's really looking at what measures need to be taken. So I think Global Group we'll see is one of the first groups that may open. So that'll be something to learn from. They have been in restaurant business forever. So if someone's going to get it right, I hope that's where we're going to be able to learn from. So I agree with you. Yeah.
I agree. So if anybody has last questions, if there's any questions out there, feel free. There's a lot of comments I'm seeing here, and I think a lot of people are agreeing with you in what's going on in the city. And, I think a lot of it is a learning curve for all of us, as you were saying, and a lot of things are going to change in the next week to 2 weeks. So it sort of seems like every day things change. But I really think that now when the government has put in place, the BC Restaurant Association did a great job with the government putting all of these things into place. They're trying to make it as BC as a model for other restaurateurs around North America, which is great to see. But I think that the things that are happening in the U.S. are quite different than what's happening here. And of course, thankfully, the COVID cases weren't as high here as they are in the East Coast and in the U.S. So that's great. And we just have to keep it that way, right? There's a lot of things that we have to consider. But, you can get your gelato. You can stand in line. You can socially distance yourself in line at a Gusto for Italy. That's a really good a taste for Italy. That's a great one. There's a lot I've been down there. So there's a lot of these that you can go to, socially distance yourself, and you get that ice cream cone. You don't have to worry. But there's lots of things to consider. And I think, as you were saying, patience is important. And there's a lot of ideas, and looking forward to see what kind of ideas there are. And I think if people have friends in the restaurant industry, copy your friends. See what your friends are doing. If they're doing it right, copy them. That's the way to do it. So,
thanks for having me on, Richard.
Yeah, thank you for
good
joining
discussion.
me, Cassandra.
Lots of questions and lots of answers out there. So let's all work together and make this happen and get money back in pockets and the economy going again in a safe and slow manner.
I agree with you. Thank you for joining me this afternoon, Cassandra. Always a pleasure. And thank you to everybody who's tuning in. And check out Good Life Vancouver's blog. She's got a lot going on all the time. And follow her on Instagram and Twitter at Good Life Van. Thank you.
Thank you.